received from the abolitionist fairy who leaves me these in the middle of the night. Come in the morning, and there it is on my door. So this one is, if you don't want to see this particular image up close, as I'm going to pass this one around here in just a moment. The other side is just words. So you just be aware of that as you pass by. I'm going to pass this one in just a moment. In fact, I've got two of these, so I'll just go ahead and start this one over here. Just make sure it gets maybe over to him and then back this way, so you all can see what I'm talking about up close, because I know it's kind of tiny, but I didn't want to do this with a PowerPoint presentation, because I didn't know exactly what tools I would have, so I just brought this. So this is a typical one that I received. I've received this one many times, and I've received other ones that are similar. As you can see, the flyer is taken up with an image of some mutant Vin Diesel baby man inside an equally mutated human womb. Honestly, once you see it, you won't be able to unsee Vin Diesel. Blood is gushing out of the umbilical cord and dripping out through the cervix. I want you to know that it was hard for me even to write that, but putting into words, it just seemed so absurd. It wasn't that it was hard for me to put the words down. It was absurd what I was writing down. But the words hopefully give you reason to pause and think about the wisdom of placing this in a flyer, this image in a flyer, that can make its way into the hands of practically anyone. And they often do. The problem with this tactic is that it's more likely to create opposition to abolition than it is to turn people towards the cause. Think about it for a second. Every time that someone puts one of these in the window of my office, it makes me a little bit mad, a little bit miffed, because the lack of context makes it look like this is my messaging device. I have actually had professors come to me distraught, asking why I would put this in my window. And this is at Cedarville, where we are all proudly pro-life. Here's another one. Now, I am going to warn you about this one, because if you have ever been traumatized by abortion, there is an image of abortion in here. This is another one that I got probably in June. It was thereabout during Pride, the so-called Pride Month. I think after Pride Month, we should probably have Envy Month, maybe, Gluttony Month. Anyway, obviously, we are against the Pride movement. And the messaging this isn't terribly bad. There's some problems with its rhetoric, like it calls itself a public service announcement. I'm not quite sure that that's quite accurate, but we'll give them that one, because maybe they are trying to do the public a service, and that's good. And then you have quite a bit of rhetoric here with the rainbow flag behind it. Again, so far so good. Okay, now here comes the image, just in case. Then you open it up and you see this. And you get an image of an abortion, larger than life. Now again, this image, this needs to be seen by people. But it doesn't need to be a gotcha moment. This is a very bad tactic. Think about it for another moment here. If the guy who is responsible for creating the rhetoric of abortion ethics and public advocacy in bioethics, and who has gone to secular academic conferences with director of the Defending Life Summer Institute written on his card, that could get me ostracized from my entire academic community. If that is going to bother me, think about what's going to happen when you innocently, I know it's innocent, when you innocently put this, trying to reach someone, put it in the door of a young woman who was convinced to have an abortion in her teens and has regretted it ever since. Basic psychology tells us that if you cause her trauma over the incident, such as this flyer would cause, she's going to associate your message with that trauma, and she is going to run for it. So I get plenty of these, so I'm going to I'm going to show you what happens to this flyer when it gets into her hands. And she goes over to the garbage, and she slams it in tears. That's what happens. Put yourself in her shoes. Who would you believe? The person who throws images of trauma at you and claims that you did something bad, or the person who claims that you did nothing wrong and that they want to empower you and help you to act upon your freedoms as a woman? Who are you going to want to listen to more? This is something we must think about as those who seek abolition. I'm not saying that the extreme abolitionist is not sincere. No, they are very sincere. I have no doubt of that. But the mistake that they're making with this tactic reveals that they don't understand a basic communication principle, that you cannot assume that your audience will hold the same emotional response to an image or story that you would have. Artistic communication, like an image or a story, they're indirect in their means. They are not the best vehicle for the direct messaging of truth. As such, the communicator must take great care as they craft the message. Such jackboot tactics as putting that image in front of her and traumatizing her all over again, and all of the data tells us that they are traumatized. The vast majority of them hate themselves because they have gotten an abortion. They end up siding with those people who give them that false comfort. And they end up being proponents of abortion rather than for life, because of our lack of compassion. A popular commentator has said, facts don't care about your feelings. And he's right. But it's equally true that people's feelings don't care about your facts. If we are to succeed in abolishing abortion, we must care both for the facts and for our audience's feelings. We must. Otherwise, we are creating our own opponents. The second failed tactic, we have that card. Can I get it back up here? Here we go. Thank you. Oh, look at it. I have this one too. Yes. That's a new one. I don't have it in that form though. Whoever brought that up here, if that's for me, thank you. If it's not, I'll leave it there and let you get it in a second. The other failed tactic that extreme abolitionism uses that I want to talk about is the oversimplification of the message. Now, in a way, we can easily understand why they would want to simplify the message. Simplification is good. It's good at cutting through BS and getting to the heart of the problem. We certainly need to fight against the pro-abortion crowd's attempt to twist language to make the killing of an innocent child sound like women's health, or the most ironic of euphemisms, reproductive freedom. Just on a side note, think about that for just one moment. That is in and of itself an overcomplicating of an argument. Abortion supporters today are claiming that reproductive freedom can be defined as the termination of reproduction. Insane. Reproductive freedom is not the freedom to reproduce, they say, but the freedom from reproduction. You see, I'm all for simplification. That kind of convoluted logic has got to be fought against. But things can be oversimplified. And doing so in the case of abortion has great potential to ostracize those decision makers that we want to convince most. And again, I'm speaking here of young mothers particularly, but also young fathers, who are also often fed a lie. They have to be convinced, A, that their child is actually a human being. We can't take that for granted. And B, that it's worth bearing that child to term. We can't take that for granted. But I wonder if extreme abolitionist tactics are actually going to get that done. So let's return to our flyers. So let me read the back of this one that you have. It goes like this. Our society euphemistically refers to abortion as terminating a pregnancy. True. But what is really taking place in every abortion is the intentional killing of a human being. Also true. Good simplifications, by the way. Deep down beneath all the euphemisms and suppression of truth, everybody knows that abortion is murder. Oversimplification. Not everybody knows that. That's the whole problem. And then, believe it or not, murder is a complicating term that we have to come to grips with. In every abortion, it says, somebody is making a choice to murder a child. Either the mother is choosing to end her pregnancy by killing her child, or somebody else is killing her baby against her will. But whoever is responsible for the choice, in quotation marks, is clearly guilty of murder and should be held fully accountable for their crime. And this one, I mean, this was bad enough. But now, we're in really dangerous territory for our cause. There are at least two problems of oversimplification on this flyer. The first is definitional. It says that the mother, when she chooses to kill her baby, is, quote, making a choice to murder a child. Now, to prove this philosophically, theologically, and legally, you would have to prove that the mother, A, knew that what she's killing was human. B, that she knew it was alive. Because you can't murder something that's dead. And C, that she was not coerced into the act. That's different from force. Coercion and force are different. Force is a kind of coercion. But coercion can also be done through deceit and trickery. Given the state of modern education on biology and anthropology, we can hardly assume the first two for most women. And given the legal status of abortion in most states, and the strong incentives that we regularly observe in society to abort a child, there is a high chance that the third is not true either, because so many women are pressured, and the pressures are immense to get that abortion. As in, get the abortion, or we will disown you completely and leave you all alone with no help whatsoever to raise that child. Well, then you might say the flyer doesn't say that she's always to blame. The doctors, the relatives, or the boyfriend who took her might be the murderer. Okay, setting aside the fact that in today's world we cannot even assume that those working at Planned Parenthood always know what they are doing, think unplanned. The flyer makes no such distinction for the traumatized and often confused, women who have lived through an abortion. So when the flyer says that whoever is guilty of the choice is clearly guilty of murder and should be held fully accountable for their crime, end quote, what do you think she is going to assume? Could you blame her for thinking that if she confesses what she has done, that extreme abolitionists would want to throw her in jail? And the even more unfortunate truth is that many of them would want to, as we saw with Danny McCormick. To remove all doubt on that, here is one more flyer, a smaller one, clearly geared towards intimidation through oversimplification. It simply reads this: taking an abortion pill to murder a baby should be prohibited and prosecuted as a criminal act. Full stop. That's all you get on that one. But here's the practical problem with all of this. One oversimplification can easily lead to another and enable another. So, if I'm an abortionist, you tell the mother that she is a murderer. Okay, I can work with that. I can tell her just as easily that you are a religious extremist who wants to lock her up in prison or turn her into a Handmaid's Tale style childbearing sex slave of the domineering patriarchy. Sounds familiar? If those are your two options, And for many of these young women, they are not as schooled as we are here at Cedarville. They are not in good homes that have taught them how to use their minds well. If those are the two options that she is given, very often those are the only two options she sees. Which one, in her emotional state, or his emotional state, because men have those binary options given to them sometimes too, which one do you think they will choose? Neither one is good. So we've seen that extreme abolitionism is more likely to do harm than good because of its tactics. But it's even more important to point out that the overall strategy will likely result, and in some cases has resulted, in the death of more babies rather than fewer. This is because extreme abolitionism strategically is an all or nothing kind of group. Extreme abolitionists will not abide compromise and seem to more routinely fight against those who differ from them slightly than those whom they differ completely. Let me give you some examples. I've already told you about the decision of Louisiana lawmakers to commit political harakiri with the abortion ban. Luckily, lawmakers with more wisdom were able to get a ban in place only a month later. The only exceptions now in Louisiana are to save the mother's life, to prevent serious health risks to her, and if the fetus will not survive the pregnancy, such as in a tubal pregnancy, where the baby it's impossible for the baby to come to term, and the baby is going to rupture the tube, and the mother and the baby is going to die. Now, 2 out of 3 of those exceptions are not legitimate. Can we be clear? It is not legitimate to kill the baby because the mother might die. If the woman's life is in danger because of the baby, the quickest and safest way to eliminate the threat is to deliver the baby alive. The abortion takes forever and traumatizes the woman's body, whereas simply delivering the baby, even by C-section, is so much simpler and effective in saving her life. So just have the baby, it's done. The idea of aborting for physical health issues, well, that's atrociously selfish. And it's a slippery slope that Louisiana is going to have to come back to later on and get rid of. They've got to get rid of it. But imagine that the second bill was not enacted at all. Imagine that Louisiana, deep red. Imagine it's more like Ohio, which is kind of deep red sometimes and kind of like not deep red at all other times with some issues. In 2020, let's just imagine Louisiana is like Ohio. In 2020, the number of abortions in Louisiana topped 7,500. So we can imagine that in the environment of a post-Roe world, that number would be at least similar, if not larger. If Louisiana's legislative environment was more like ours, those shenanigans from Representative McCormick could have possibly set back a ban for years. And every year, another 7,500, and only growing as the population of Louisiana grows. Every year that you defer partial success for complete success is another year in a state where babies are killed, depriving them of life. Never forget that. That the goal is to save lives. That is the goal. Here's a couple other examples. Again, in 2022, equally deep red South Carolina, lawmakers failed to pass blanket abortion restrictions because they didn't adequately assess the limits of their own party's resolve on the issue. They could have had deeper cuts into the available abortions. They didn't get anything, and then because they drew attention to themselves, their state Supreme Court then lifted their 6-week ban and pushed them back to a 20-week ban. It's still in the courts, from what I understand. In 2023, abolitionists adamantly asserted that women should be charged with murder if they abort their babies. This is in Kansas. And it led to a landslide vote enshrining abortion into Kansas's state constitution. I I don't bring up Ohio because Ohio, there's a totally different problem on the other end of the spectrum with what happened in Ohio. But as you can see, being too wishy-washy on abortion can end up giving you the exact same results as being too stubborn to work with people, to enact what you can enact in the moment you are currently in. What extreme abolitionism doesn't understand here is that any kind of, in fact, it's what any kind of extremist doesn't understand, is that laws have to be passed in what we call the Overton window. The Overton window refers to the policy window that the voters of a democracy can actually stomach. In politics, unlike in personal philosophy, it doesn't really matter how righteous your position is if nobody will vote for it. That's just the reality. What we have to remember as political actors in the United States of America is that influencing public opinion is an art in which the most savvy communicators win regardless of their ideals. Socrates and Plato told us that rhetoric was good so long as it spoke truth, and that it was good regardless of how well it was stated. Well, we all know how that worked out for Socrates. If you don't, he died. It didn't work out great. Aristotle, Plato's student, taught us that the good speaker is the good man or woman speaking well. This is a much better way to look at our fight today. Every day that we do not pass a bill further restricting abortion in whatever way we can get it through winsome rhetoric, whatever we can convince people to push it a little bit further and a little bit further, every day we don't do that is another day that hundreds, if not thousands, of children die. If the populace has a stomach to pass a 12-week ban, I'm talking nationally here, let's imagine nationally. If the populace had a stomach to pass a 12-week ban with exceptions for rape and incest and the life of the mother, what I say is pass that bill now. Get it done. In doing so, you will shift the Overton window further towards our final goal, which is no abortions. I think the best proverb for what I'm getting at is one that I heard many years ago, and it goes something like this. If you're starving and someone offers you half a sandwich, take half a sandwich. It doesn't do you any good to stand there on principle and say, no, I'm not going to take half a sandwich. It's only moral that you look deep in your heart and offer me the whole sandwich. Good luck with that. And actually, and this is completely unrelated to who I heard the proverb from, I actually had a homeless person do this to me in San Francisco years ago. At the time, I was supporting a family of 5. We're a family of 7 now. This family of 5 on very low income and was only in the town in order to attend a conference that I really couldn't afford anyway. There I was. We were eating peanut butter and jelly, whatever we could do to get by. And we weren't going to the exorbitantly priced restaurants in that city. No way. But when the homeless woman came up to me and asked me to buy her a meal, I looked deep into my heart and then deep into the eyes of my wife to see her heart. And I said, hey, yeah, we'll buy you a meal. We'll buy you a breakfast sandwich from over here at Burger King. And she said, I can't eat Burger King. I want you to buy me a meal from here. And she pointed at a kind of mid-scale restaurant. I said, I can buy you a meal over here. Well, I can't eat there. I've got to eat here, she said. Well, no doubt the finer restaurant had finer food that would have been better for her, I suppose. But the old adage stood, beggars can't be choosers. And so we walked away, and she was left hungry. In our current political environment, we're desperately hungry to save lives. Are you desperately hungry? I'm desperately hungry to save as many lives as we can. Babies are dying every day. We have a real fight on our hands in Ohio. And we must ask ourselves if a my way or highway attitude is the best strategy for this moment. Here's another way to think about this sandwich metaphor. What's stopping you from taking the half of the sandwich and eating every last crumb and then immediately asking for the other half of the sandwich? Nothing. Our opponents on the other side know this. And they've been using this tactic for years very successfully. They have shifted the Overton window step by step by step, first laying actually a decades-long groundwork for Roe, and then eventually abandoning the rhetoric of safe, legal, and rare to, quote, shout their abortion. I can remember a time when that last one was completely unthinkable that anyone would be proud that they had had an abortion. But they've slowly chipped away at the American mind until what was once unthinkable is starting to become, in some corners, typical. And now, it's time for us to think about that. And maybe it's time for us to do the same tactics, the same strategies that have been used so successfully against us. I'm not talking about lying. I'm not talking about cheating. Okay? I'm not talking about things that are unethical. I'm talking about taking what we can get when we can get it and fighting the good fight. We must keep our ideals. We must never, ever compromise our ideals. It is always important to say that there should, and say out loud, that there should never be exceptions for rape or incest. The baby did nothing wrong. That the life of the mother is not in danger because of a pregnancy that is coming to term. That is not happening. We must remember that the killing of an innocent baby in the womb, indeed, someone is guilty of murder. That is not wrong. For those who know what they are doing, we should hold them accountable. But it's also important for us to lay the groundwork so that people know what they are doing and they legally have things that tell them that they should know what they are doing. But we got to do it right now. At the same time, we have to do the work of winsomely convincing our fellow Americans that abortion is just that. And we're not going to do it with shock and awe tactics. They don't work. They just further polarize an already polarized conversation. We must speak the truth in love. For the Christian, wrath and callousness are never the answer. Babies are dying, and we can't downplay that. But we must also remember that men and women are hurting as well. More often than not, they're also the victims of a culture that has taught them that their bodies are nothing more than meat, that they have no soul and thus no responsibility. And we need to remember that the people who have been duped by this, they're sitting in our churches just as often as they're not. The abortion issue is just one front in a global war for the heart of humanity. And the campaign we are currently in is not easy. We can't just parachute into the capital city and one-shot the Leviathan in the head, and then it's all over. Oh no. Ours is a long and arduous march all the way across the continent. And each of us must play our part with grace and resolve, bravely taking every win we can get, even when we can't get everything we want. And that's all. We have time for questions now, right? Yes.
I just want to say thank you for being here.
Oh.
Thank you for speaking. I just had a question because you mentioned like shock tactics with some of the pictures that were above. You said that that it's like you believe that the public should see these
Yes.
images.
Absolutely.
Okay, so then I'm wondering how do you suppose that the public sees them without being shown them? Because
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I thought you were done.
oh sorry. Because if you ask somebody, do you want to see like a picture of nobody's gonna say, yeah, show me a picture of this and the baby. Like you have to show them sometimes through shocking ways, and that's sometimes how you have to do it because no one's going to willingly be like, yes, show me a picture.
Well, I disagree. People do willingly look at images of abortions. I think that's the first, and if I could just disagree with you on that. But it has to do with the way that you approach it. So you can't just, you can't just walk, right, you're right, you can't just walk up, like, we can't go to UD or Wright State and just say, hey, I've got a picture of an aborted baby here, would you like to see it? Like, nobody's going to want to look at that. But we can set up a booth there, and we can say abortion is the innocent killing of a human child. Just words. That's going to get enough ire stoked, right? And then people are going to come, and we can say, please, we can have the sign say, please sit with us and talk with us if you disagree. And then if you sit and you talk with them, you lay out the case, and then you say, hey, I have something I'd like you to say. And you've laid this groundwork where, hey, I'm not some sort of shock trooper come here to condemn you. I'm just trying to convince you of a truth. And you lay that groundwork, and then you say, I have an image. I understand if you don't want to see it because it's a gruesome image that, quite frankly, should shock you. But I do have an image of an aborted fetus. Could I show that to you to help you understand why I would say that it's a human child? And they might say yes. And then you show them. And this is the Life Training Institute. Scott Klusendorf says he says that this is the most effective way. But then you have to set it up. And when Scott Klusendorf, when he comes here to campus, when he goes anywhere and he's saying this, he always gives people an opportunity to leave. Because you see some women don't need to see it because they've held it in their hands. And that's what we have to remember. That she might have a legitimate reason to not see that image. Because it's in her mind. And you give them the opportunity. And I think when you sit with someone and you're talking with them, you get a clear understanding of who really has seen abortion and who hasn't. You know, the woman who's seen abortion, she's not going to come up to you and be talking about it like it's no big deal. Even those who, quote, shout their abortion, they are going to admit to you that, hey, yeah, it was a big deal, it was hard, it wasn't easy for me. Like I would encourage you to go to shoutyourabortion.com, I think is the website, and just read some of the testimonies of women who are proud of their abortions. You read enough of them, you begin to realize that they're coping. That's what they're doing. They're not really proud of their abortions. They want a way to get away from the guilt. And this has been a way that has been offered to them. Does that help?
It makes sense, but I'm just, if that you say that that women sometimes don't know what they're doing by killing their baby in a womb, and I would respectfully disagree, because I think that women know exactly what species they're pregnant with and what it is. Like, I can't have a child right now. A pro-abortion woman would comfort her friend who's having a miscarriage like it's a human child.
Yep.
They know what they're pregnant with. Like, I think that women know exactly what's going on. But if the goal is to educate people that abortion is murder and what they're pregnant with is a human child, and wouldn't that be accomplished through sort of showing these images, getting populations massively educated on this issue? Because I mean, it's going to take a long, long time to have a one-on-one discussion at a booth with every single person. Would you like to see this? No, because a picture speaks 1,000 words, and when they actually see the photo, it sometimes convinces people the way the conversation went. So
I think we're talking across purposes in a lot of ways. I don't think that we're really disagreeing a lot. I think that it's a nuanced thing. I don't think that every one of those conversations I'm talking about needs to be one-on-one. I think that we need to be doing a lot more work with Stand for Lives chapters like ours. Like, we should really be having this conversation with women on this campus, because there are women on this campus who are seeking abortions. This is just a statistical fact. I don't know that no one's talking to me about it. It's just a statistical fact. It's happening here. And the women here, the men here too, they need to see these images. And this happens by having something like this. I'm brand new as an advisor for Stand for Life. And I perhaps am not serving them as well as I could, that I will be able to in the future. You know what I really should have done is I should have contacted Kevin Sims and Mark Smith of the history department, and I should have done a lot more PAC students here, politics and American culture. We should have got them in here, and I didn't because I just didn't think about that. But now I have, right? It's later, right? And so you just but it really is. It's a long, arduous march. You have to remember that. This is not Blitzkrieg. This is the Italian Peninsula. This is a long, very slow campaign that we may not see in our, I'm hopeful we will see in our lifetime. In 2021, I stood sat in an abortion panel, and I was the one person on the abortion panel who said, we can see the end of Roe versus Wade in our lifetime. And the others were like, oh, I don't know, he might be aiming too high. And I'm like, no, we can. It's happening. We're getting closer and closer. And then 2022, it happened. I believe that we can see the end of abortion in America. But it's not going to happen with a magic bullet. It's going to happen, and even in our personal lives, there's no like magic bullet. I can show you the picture and boom, it happens. Because people interpret that differently. And that's the issue. It's an interpretive issue. It's that we are interpreting it through our lens, and they're interpreting it through theirs. So you said they don't know that what they're killing is a baby. I would say that they might know instinctually, but everything they have been told goes against their instincts, and these come into conflict, and it creates great confusion in their hearts. And so, even though perhaps they should know, they don't because of the systematic. Really, I mean, what else do you call it? The systematic brainwashing of our society to think about the child in the womb as something other than human. And they've lost, and as soon as you win one battle, another one comes up. So the abortion apologists, they've stopped saying it's not human. They just said it's not a person. And so the woman might know it's a human being, but because they don't want it, they are able to narratively, not logically, but narratively wash away the personhood of the baby, because I don't want this baby. And this baby's never coming to term, so I'm not thinking about the baby's future because the baby doesn't have a future. So the baby is not a person. Because you have to be conscious in order to be a person, right? No, wrong. To be a person, you must be made in the image of God. You see, they're not taught that. This is why it's such a long process. This is why the battle for abortion, a big part of it is complete educational freedom. Like, when was the last time you heard an abortion, not an abortion apologist, a life apologist tell you that if you want to see the end of abortion in your lifetime, break the will, break the power of the public school system. It's the only way. So that's what I mean. I think that if you really want that image to be successful, you must create a relationship, even if it's just a relationship like what we have right here first. Otherwise, it's not going to do what you want it to do.
Would you support a bill of equal protection or an abolition bill if you had an opportunity to speak? If one was up in Ohio and you had an opportunity to speak?
Absolutely, I would support it. Of course. If there was a bill, and the bill was all abortion banned from conception forward, no exceptions for rape or incest or the health of the mother, or maybe the mother's life is threatened, I would support it. I personally would want, I would want them to be able to move a tubal pregnancy. I do not think that it is good ethical practice to simply remove a tubal pregnancy. I think that they should try to save every last one of the tubal pregnancies. If you're going to take it out, you should try to put it into the womb. And they're going to say, well, we don't have the science for that. Well, you get the science for that by trying. That's what I would say.
Would you, so that would include past abolition bills having included criminalization, like in before the bill, would you?
Criminalization is different.
Okay.
Okay, criminalization, this is what I would say with that. You have to have a true meeting of the minds between the mother and the abortionist. Okay, so like, okay, first of all, you ban it, and you say that this is murder. Okay, if you intentionally kill your child, it's got to say that in there, that you are intentionally killing your baby. Okay, You see what
I
I'm
see
saying?
what you're saying,
Yeah.
but, I mean, existing homicide laws take those types of things into account.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly, so, I mean, if you wanted to put it in though, it would have to say, in other words, it needs to meet the standards of homicide. So you can have, I mean, there's such thing as manslaughter,
right.
and I think that what a lot of women are doing is they're doing, it's third degree manslaughter, is really what's happening. So it's not always a murder, and that's why I say that that's problematic to say that there's always a murder taking place. I don't think there's always a murder taking place every time a human being is killed by another human being. I don't think any of us do. So it doesn't make sense to say that all abortion is murder. Some of it is manslaughter. All of it is the killing of an innocent human being. All of it is. So I think that you have to have a meeting of the mind. You have to have, the mother has to know what's going on. So women, young girls can get pregnant at ages 12 and sometimes earlier. Are you really going to say that the 12-year-old who was rushed to the abortionist by her parents and said, "Don't worry, baby, they're going to take that little pregnancy out. They're just going to induce a miscarriage." Are you going to really say that she's a murderer? No, obviously not. Obviously not. And so I think by the same token, I think that up to this point, you can't, obviously laws can't be retroactive, but you have to also be careful with your rhetoric. Because I don't think that right now, many women are not committing murder, even if they are inducing the abortion themselves, because they have been fed so many lies. Now, they're doing something awful and terrible. It is absolutely barbaric, okay? But they don't know very often. They don't understand that what is inside them is a child. I mean, I would encourage you sometime to read to just go to Guttmacher Institute and read what they say about what abortion is. Go to Planned Parenthood and read what they tell young women an abortion is. They tell them it's anything but the killing of an innocent child. And so many of these women, the abortion happens. They see it. They see what has happened to them. They see their baby. And they say, "What have I done?" And they don't know till afterwards. And so you have to be able to prove. If you want to say it's a murder, it's a homicide, you're going to have to be able to say that the woman knew she was killing a human being. And that this human being was as much a human being as anyone else here. Slavery is a really good analog to what we're talking about. Now, to us, in our minds, it is unthinkable that you would think about a slave as only human when we need them to be human. But that's the way they treated them. They wanted, the southern states wanted slaves to be humans for the census. The 3/5 compromise actually was a good thing, because it was saying, no, you can't do that. You can't do that in the South, because they wanted to control the House by counting all their slaves. And so they wanted them to be human whenever we're counting the census, but then they didn't want them to be human whenever they were abusing them physically, sexually, even going so far as to kill them. They didn't want them to be human then. And we look back on that and we go, "Oh, that's so atrocious." And it was. But go read The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, and you begin to see the attitude. Mark Twain's calling out this attitude and saying and showing that it's not logical, but they're living in a culture that has this blind spot. And we have that blind spot today. And we have to do the work to remove the blind spot. Like today, you kill someone of African descent, it's a murder, period. Right? Nobody doubts that. But there was a time in America when they did. Are you following? In that time period, it was indeed a murder. It was. But it was not possible in post-Civil War United States to go back and try every slave owner who had killed one of their slaves. That's not legally possible. Now, does God require the blood of those murdered people? Was it sin? Yes. Was it a violation of the commandment, thou shalt not kill? Yes, but legally you have a problem. So since we're talking about laws, I'm making that distinction. Yes.
Yeah, a couple things. I guess first of all, I don't think there are any abolitionists who are advocating for the prosecution of women who got abortions prior to it being made illegal.
No.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that because I wasn't sure if that came across. Secondly,
Very good. Well noted.
Secondly, you mentioned, the term you're using, extreme abolitionism, if anyone has a better one. I think what you described is just what most people know as abolitionism. The incrementalism approach that you gave at the end, even though it might have the end goal of seeing abortion fully abolished, that is not what people know abolition as today. Just based on what I've seen out there on the internet and such.
Okay.
The incrementalist pro-life movement, which generally will oppose bills of abolition. I know you're saying you'd be on board with a bill of abolition, but again, in Louisiana, it was all these pro-life state legislators who said, no, we can't fully abolish it, that's bad. Here, let's add exceptions into the law. And I think one of the main kind of theological foundations for abolitionists for why we would oppose that incrementalism is from Isaiah 10, saying, woe to them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that right grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment or from justice, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless. So you've got this abolition bill that says we're going to protect all of these children, all of these fatherless in most circumstances children who are just being led to the slaughter. We're going to rescue them. You've got the pro-life movement, which from other states, you had pro-life movements from other states come to shoot down the abolition bill of Louisiana. That'll happen in places like Oklahoma that have also had defeated abolition bills. And it is the pro-life movements who say, no, we do not want to prosecute women for killing their children intentionally. They want to keep special murder rights for the women in a lot of cases. And they say we need to have rape exceptions and that sort of thing. So they write these unrighteous laws that say you are allowed to murder your own child if that child was conceived in rape. The most fatherless child possible, making them a prey. And that's why abolitionists will say, as soon as you throw that in there, we're not on board anymore. Right? We want to do things God's way. We don't want to try to be worldly wise and make compromises with the culture to kind of get what we can. We're trusting in His providence to eventually bring an end to this thing. The church can stand up and be a prophetic witness to the world and say, this is evil, this is slaughter, you're murdering innocent humans. Then that's where we'll see actual change.
Okay.
And
you're giving me a lot. So let me address what you've said so far. So first of all, if that's what an abolitionist is, then I'm saying let's find a different path, because what you were calling the incrementalists, they're really just people who want exceptions. Like in Louisiana, right? Someone say, well, we can't just do it all at once. Well, actually, you could.
yeah.
You could. You just won't. So I would say then if you're saying that's just what an abolitionist is, then I would say that we need to relabel that extreme abolitionism, because there's a pathway down the middle that is righteous and still gets things done. Okay. Secondly, you have to remember that verse in Isaiah is talking about kings, okay, and princes. Kings and princes get to decree things all on their own. Okay. This is not what we have in the United States. We don't have a king. We don't have princes. We have representatives of the people. And the people are varied. They are extremely varied. So Danny McCormick, to take this example, Danny McCormick, he put forward a bill that I would disagree with, but a bill that I can at least say I understand where it's coming from. And the only place that I would disagree with it is that we need to state clearly in that bill that it has to meet the standard of a homicide. That it has to meet that standard. That's the way I would change it. Okay, so I'm not saying that we need to put an exception in where we never prosecute a woman. I think sometimes you do. Okay, you definitely do. There are some women who know they're pregnant with a human being and they're killing it anyway. Okay, that's a murder. All right, so we're on the same page.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but when Danny McCormick, he's treating it like it's his bill. He gets to put the bill forward, and I guess, you know, he can, of course, pull it back. He can do that too, it's within his powers, based upon the Louisiana system there. But it's foolish to not take what you can get, to not be the start. That's what I'm saying, is that it's foolishness to say, oh, well, God's going to hold me personally accountable because these losers over here who want these exceptions because they are wishy-washy and they don't have the same kind of bravery that I have, then now I'm going to completely spike everything. I want to remind you, there would be no Constitution of the United States of America if righteous men had not compromised with unrighteous men. That's what you have to remember. So I'm not saying that you give in to just anything and everything, but that you get everything when you have a constitutional democratic republic, you must take what you can get in the moment and come back for the rest later. That's success. The only other option is revolution. And I'm not talking about the soft kind. I'm talking about real fights. That's the only other option. If you want to see the change, then you must accept the compromise in the moment. Okay, not a compromise in your heart, not a compromise in your stance. What Danny McCormick, if I was counseling him, what I would say is, Danny, you get up and you say, sure, look, I can't fight this. You clearly want this unnecessary exception that penalizes innocent babies. I think that's wrong. But you know what? I want to save every baby I can. And so even though you're wrong, I'll wait till later. But mark my words, so long as my constituents keep sending me back, I'm going to come back for those exceptions every single year until I get them. That's what he should have done. Is that fair?
I have a hard time agreeing with that, because you're basically, I assume
Why?
most abolitionists are Christian people.
So why would you have a hard time agreeing with what I just said?
Because he is signing his name to a decree which gives explicit permission for people to murder their own children.
Okay. He is voting yea or nay. Okay.
Yeah.
He's voting yea or nay
at this
for
point,
shall
the bill that he wrote.
be passed.
Yeah, with the bill that he wrote, his name is on that as an author of that.
That is correct.
Yeah.
But not on the amendments. They're amendments.
Mhm.
The amendments are from other people. So his name is not on those amendments.
Okay.
Yeah, his name is on the original bill. And again, I might want to put in a provision just to make sure that we understand what it means to murder your unborn child. But other than that, yeah, I'm for it. You see, that's the difference. Is he's not responsible for those amendments.
Mm-hmm.
But wow, what a victory that could have been for him in his cause. Now, again, luckily, it came back. But you know what? Here's the crazy thing. I didn't even get to mention this. Here's the crazy thing. When it came back, they eventually passed something in June. But when it came back, it had more exceptions than the ones he rejected. So the original one was just for the life of the mother. There was no rape and incest exception. But when it came back and it got passed in June, there were rape and incest exceptions that quite possibly would not have been there if he was willing to take what he can get in the moment. So I'm not an incrementalist in what you're saying. Okay, I'm not saying that, oh, we must do this incrementally. That's not what I'm saying.
You're just willing to accept increments.
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct. That's the middle path.
I understand.
Yeah.
I think if you're taught, you made a distinction between Danny McCormick's bill and a bill that would include a definition of the standards of homicide. But wouldn't that be the jurisdiction of the justice system? All we're saying with an abolition bill is that it guarantees equal protection, which means the criminalization of abortion, so that the same laws that protect you and I as born persons also would protect the preborn. So, I think that the justice system is in place in order to try those individual cases, but that's the law itself isn't where you would delineate what the standards of homicide are.
legislature makes the law. So if you wanted to say that it would be stupid to do that, probably wouldn't make it through the court system, the judicial system. But if you wanted to say that homicide also includes killing your cat, you could say it if you wanted to. You could redefine homicide, there's no reason why you can't. Because you're making laws, right?
Right.
And so if part of that law is defining what the terms are.
So in the abolition bill, all it says is that abortion is prenatal homicide.
Yeah,
And so would
Right.
you take issue with that then?
yeah, I take issue with the fact that it's an oversimplification. That it's just too easy to turn that back on you. That's the problem. The problem is that we're not living, okay, if I can use, we're taking the verses from Isaiah that are directly about this, or maybe, the Levitical law or something like that. We're taking those, and we're not taking the verses out of the Proverbs about the wisdom of leadership. And the fact that you live in a world full of people who are against the cause of righteousness, and that you must be as wise as serpents. You just have to. You have to realize that, again, not compromise your position. I'm not saying compromise your position. I'm not saying hide your position. What I'm saying is that you must use words fitly spoken, because they are like apples of gold and pictures of silver. You must remember that the merchant will say, no, it's not, and then you go your way, and they'll say, look, I'm paraphrasing, look at how I pulled one over on them. I don't know the first time, so quite like that. But you have to know that. You have to know that this is the world we live in. That you have to go in fully aware that they're going to throw everything they can at you to make you look like the enemy, to make you look like the one who is against women. That you are the one who wants to harm women. So you have to do everything you can when you write that bill, and I hope you get a chance to write that bill someday. Or actually, I hope you don't. I hope that happens before you get there. But if it doesn't, and you get there, and you get to be a legislator someday, I hope you get a chance to write this bill. And when you write it, make it impossible for them to use the language against you. When you give an oversimplified, it's just murder, then people can throw then it makes it really easy. They're going to do it anyway, but it makes it far too easy to paint you as the bad guy. But when you clearly say that when you turn it around, instead of, it's the same effect, okay? If I say abortion is murder, and anyone who commits an abortion is a murderer, and we're going to prosecute them as a murderer. See, hear how negative that sounds? Okay? Now try this on for size. Ready? You know what? We realize that there's a high standard for homicide. And we want to make sure that our bill is crystal clear that no woman will be prosecuted for murder who does not meet that higher level, that higher standard of proof for a homicide case. You see what I'm saying? Now, are we still going to prosecute? A woman for homicide if she reaches that already existent? Yeah, you're going to prosecute her anyway. You haven't changed the reality of ending abortion by threatening people with at least a lifetime in jail, right? You haven't changed that. You've still put in the deterrent, but now you've said it in such a way that people realize that you have a heart, and that's the difference.
I guess I would just say that the different degrees of homicide, that should be left up to the jurisdiction of the justice system.
Well, the justice system can only adjudicate if there are laws to adjudicate from. That's what I'm saying. Is that the laws must be made of the legislature, and then the executive branch must carry out those laws. And then the judicial systems are the ones that adjudicate them.
the abolition bill isn't partial, anyway, all it says is abortion is prenatal homicide.
Right, and then that's, and again, I'm saying that's the problem, is that they should clarify what they mean by that, the bill should. I mean, look, everybody, we live in a day and age where bills can be this long. You know, that's from top to bottom. If you have a bill that long, there's no reason why you can't put in a line specifically that says, this is what we mean by fetal homicide. You can define fetal homicide.
If you said, same standards of justice if they applied
Yeah.
to the born person,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so I don't think homicide distinguishes necessarily, I mean, now I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, no.
Is there any lawyers in here? I don't know. I don't think that word necessarily distinguishes between, first degree, what we would colloquially call murder, right, versus the various levels of manslaughter. So
I would lay it all out. I would lay out all the different levels. I would call it fetal homicide. There'd be first degree, second degree, third degree, and then there'd be fetal manslaughter, first, second, and third. And I'd lay it out. How would you lay it out? I'd go and I'd look at exactly the way it's laid out in all the other laws about what homicide was. And I would just add to a child in utero. If they do this to a child in utero, it's fetal homicide.
Or just
Yeah.
maybe explain a little bit more about the bill. All it does, to use different language, is it includes the preborn as persons in the code of homicide that has already been written.
Okay, and I understand what you're saying. Okay, I again want to reiterate, the bill needs to do more than that. It needs to clearly define what the standard is. It needs to do that, and in modern day bills, again, there's nothing wrong. I mean, there is, but there's not, right? There's nothing illegal with a bill being pages and pages long. There's no reason why you can't have a page that just tells you exactly what we're calling fetal homicide. Okay, so I'm not saying that we don't need what you're saying, I'm saying you also need this. But then, you're actually placing it in the wrong place. That doesn't belong in a bill. It belongs in the Constitution. So I encourage all of you from Ohio to go and take a look at Article 1, Section 1 of the Ohio Constitution. That says, it still says, it's not been changed. With as many changes as there have been made to the Ohio Constitution, Article 1, Section 1 still says that all men have the right to enjoy and defend life. Those are the exact words. So, this is my plan. Let's go to Article 1, Section 1. We say, you know what? It's high time that we recognize the women too. In fact, why don't we write it this way? All human beings, regardless of biological sex, or age, and we'll put in now, however many they want to add to the list, let's let them add them. If they want to add sexual orientation, let's add it, because they have the right to life too. Why not? We'll add as many as we want, and then at the end it needs to say one more thing, or any other status have the right to enjoy and defend life. And you put it right in Article 1, Section 1, and then you create a constitutional crisis where you say, wait a second, you can't have this, and I don't know where they put it in the Constitution, they're still working on getting in there. You can't have this and issue one. You have to have one or the other, because after all, being in utero is a status. That's where you need to put it. You put it, that's checkmate. I mean, if you want the one-shot kill, that's it. That's the one-shot kill. Because once you change that, you just, every year, we can't now, because we flubbed it. We should have done this years ago. That after you get that in there, every year thereafter, you were trying to change the Constitution to raise the standard to change the Constitution to a 60% threshold. And once you've done those two things, game, set, match. At least in Ohio, maybe not California. How you would get there, you would need that fence then, because it's California, right? But in Ohio, that's game, set, and match. Okay. These are great questions.
Guys, another question?
Yeah, sure.
So it seemed like in a lot of your conversation, your speech tonight, you see how to phrase this. So would you say that someone who is a victim of a culture is not morally responsible for their actions because they've been indoctrinated?
They are certainly, I'm trying to find the right word, right adjective. They are certainly spiritually responsible. God will not give them a pass, okay? And they will have to answer for their sins, just like we all will if we don't have the blood of Christ covering them. They will have to answer for those sins. But there's a different question at play here. When you're talking about their culpability legally and even socially, then culture comes into play. Because now it's like the same thing. Okay, like let me give you an example. Okay, that takes it out of the realm of abortion for a second. Help us understand this. I knew a family once upon a time that did not value animal life. And they allowed their children to torture frogs. Okay? Now, let's say that child grows up. The child's been doing that his whole life. The parents allowed that. They weren't exactly socialized very well with other families, and they just don't see it. They don't see why this is such a big deal. It's just a frog. And you can tell them, until you get through to them, I think that you can at least understand. Now, are they still a social liability? Yes. Are they still doing something that is morally wrong? Yes, they are. However, I think we can all understand how it might be difficult to say of that person that they deserve the same kind of punishment as someone who preaches to us the importance of animal life and then has been caught torturing frogs. That might be a little bit different. We might have a little bit of a different standard for those two people, even though they're both doing the same thing. One has told us why this is so wrong and so bad, whereas the other, the other has never been given the opportunity to understand because of poor upbringing. This is the same problem that we're facing right now. It's the problem we're going to have to face with the modern day sex slave. Are you going to now? Do you need to, if someone's like someone is soliciting over here on the corner, do we need to like get them off the street and put them in a prison cell? Yeah, that's a really good quick fix. But it's a very different thing. It's a very different thing prosecuting the sex slave for prostitution and prosecuting the pimp. Those are two very different things. And if you will allow me, an imperfect metaphor, I know it's imperfect, okay? We kind of have a situation right now where the women going to these abortion clinics are very often like the sex slave, whereas those running them, they are like the pimps. We have two different groups of people here. And we have to, any law that we create must take this into account. Otherwise, you are damning a person, and I use that strong language very purposefully. You are damning them to a life where they cannot possibly find redemption towards any kind of regular life. When they in large part are not responsible for the circumstances that got them here. They're responsible for the action, but not the circumstances. The folks that knowingly work at Planned Parenthood, by the way, like you go to read the abortion books, they know exactly what they're doing. The abortion textbooks, they know what they're doing. Okay, the vast majority of them. I said, we can't always assume, because we know that some of them are just, quite frankly, useful, ignorant people. But many of them do. They know that the abortion they're about to give them is likely to cause lifetime post-traumatic stress disorder. Like the abortion textbook says that. It's just like, here's how you can know if it's going to cause them PTSD. And it's things like, do they feel any pressure to come and get this procedure? It's like practically all of them. And then they say, okay, well, you determine if they are going to get PTSD or not. And then if you determine they are going to have PTSD, give them the abortion anyway. That's the industry standard abortion textbook. Okay? So they know what they're doing. They are at a different level. And I am all for a bill that says, okay, right, because remember our standard, like it's got to be from here forward, and it's got to be clear. That's the clarity is important. From here forward, you administer an abortion in this state, you are a first-degree murderer. There's no way you did that by accident. There's no way you did that in the heat and the passion of the moment. You are a first-degree murderer. We will throw the book at you. You need that's the executive, right? The executive says we're going to throw the book at you, and you need a justice system that says clearly this is what the law says. Here's your choices, and I'm going to me or the jury, we're going to decide your fate because you willfully went and under our laws you murdered someone. You knew it was murder. We made it clear to you it was murder, and you shouldn't have done it.
So what if you want a clear law that makes it absolutely understandable beyond reasonable doubt to a woman that what she is doing is
Yes.
homicide?
Yes, I would. I would like that. And until I get that, I would take every single breadcrumb to throw my way. Because I want to save babies. I want there to be more life rather than less. That is the end goal. The end goal is, why does God give us the laws that He gives us? He gives them to us so that we might flourish in righteousness. It's really hard for a baby who gets killed in utero to flourish in righteousness. And so I want life because I want God's law. This will be the last one, I think.
Okay, just on that, what do you think that Jesus meant when He talked to the Pharisees and He said, you guys are closing the kingdom of God in men's faces? What do you think that meant?
I think that it meant exactly what He said.
So what I'm proposing is when we tell women that they are victims and that they're indoctrinated and that they just don't know what they're doing. I think that try that in 1930s Germany, Nazi Germany. All those people were indoctrinated.
Mm-hmm.
They were still accountable to God, period.
Yes.
But we also went and stopped them because that was an evil that needs to be stopped. But however, when we take a woman, and I don't know if you've ever stood outside of an abortion mill, but they know what they're doing. And so when we talk to women and say we're around a woman who is, and we're calling that woman a victim, and if you're a minister of the gospel, this is on you, this is on us. We are to tell them the truth, that what Jesus would have told them, that they're a murderer. Jesus came to die for murderers, and being a victim, you're calling her innocent. The definition of a victim is that they're innocent, right? So Jesus came for the sick, not the well. He came to heal the sick, like the murderers, the liars, the thieves, the fornicators.
Give me just
sure.
a second. I don't want to cut you off. I want to allow you to keep going, but you're giving me a lot. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to write some things down here. I've got some perfect things. Okay. So you're saying that Okay, hang on. Okay. Okay, hang on. Okay, I'm ready, keep going.
Okay, so just the crux of it is that if we call these women victims and we say they're innocent, that they're held with impunity and immunity, that means they're not held liable for the act of murder. We've basically made them a class of people who can murder other people, right?
Mhm.
And the baby's made in the image of God is in her womb. What you have effectively done is called her a victim, and you've robbed her of the gospel of Jesus Christ, which would tell her that she's a murderer, guilty before God because she's broken God's law, and then she can now look to Christ. But when you call him a victim, she's going to live the rest of her life as a self-righteous victim, and she has no need for Jesus Christ.
Okay.
And that would be considered heresy to bring them. You're shutting the kingdom of God in their face.
Okay, so you gave me a lot there, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to hit all of them. But I'm gonna begin with the fact that you said when you see them out there going into the abortion clinic, they know what they're doing. I would push back on that, and I would tell you that they've been told a lie about you that makes it difficult for them to hear your message. And then the way you frame your message could be, I don't know, because I've not been out there with you, but again, just knowing from the literature, they are told, up to the point they get the abortion, okay, they are told by Planned Parenthood that you are the enemy and that Planned Parenthood is the friend, and that you are going to tell them lies about themselves, and that they need to rush past you if they can, okay? And then if you happen to stop them, that they need to contradict everything you're saying, and that they need to very firmly stand against you. Okay, now, once they get into Planned Parenthood and they get the abortion, Planned Parenthood changes. They are not interested in them anymore. They get absolutely no more support. But then again, Planned Parenthood has gotten what they wanted. But I just want to challenge you to think about it differently, like what they're doing. That in a lot of ways, they're being fed lies. Okay, now, you also said that victim equals innocent. This is not true any more than if one gangster shoots another gangster, one is definitely a victim. It doesn't make him innocent. So victimhood does not equal innocence. Okay, now, also, I'm not saying that we need to tell them, that we need to go around telling them they are victims. We need to tell them that they have done an egregiously awful moral wrong in what they've done in killing their baby, and that they, in doing this, have sinned, and that they are accountable to God. So I'm agreeing with you there. I'm not saying that we don't need to do that. I'm saying that there's something different between being accountable to God and being accountable to man. These are two different things. So you brought up the Nazis. And right, yeah, the Nazis are accountable to God, and you know what Germany needed after World War II? Is they needed a group of, they needed Bonhoeffer's confessing church to come in and say, yes, you did the wrong thing, you compromised, you sinned before God, but God gives you repentance. Come back to Him. And that's what we need to do with the young men and women in our church who have participated in the abortion industry. We need to tell them, look, yes, you did wrong. And I don't have to tell you that. You know it, don't you? You know it deep down in your heart. But let me tell you, God loves you. And God wants to free you from this guilt that you are feeling. Even though you've done something wrong, His arms are open and He is ready and willing to forgive you if you will just ask Him. And we can rebuild this life that you've broken. And yes, people told you lies, and you believed lies. But now you know the truth. You don't have to believe those anymore. That's what they need. But But we don't prosecute every woman who's ever got an abortion the same way we didn't take every Nazi to Nuremberg. Because some of them, yes, they were all complicit. They were all complicit. Yes. But not all of them were complicit in the same way. And not all of them needed to be charged in the same way. The same way that after the Civil War, there were no prosecutions of rank and file soldiers. Now there were prosecutions. The Andersonville trial, for instance, there were prosecutions of officers, yes. But see, that's a different level. And what you have here is you have people participating in, if you will, to use your analogy. They're participating in kind of an evil force in our society, but they're participating at different levels. And a good abolitionist bill is going to recognize that, and it's going to say that plainly, so that people cannot deny that we understand the difference between the abortionist and the mother getting the abortion, because there is a difference. Just like there's a difference between the soldier fighting for Nazi Germany in a tank on the Eastern Front and someone who's running Auschwitz. They're not the same person. They're just not. They are complicit, both of them, but in very different ways. I think of Corrie ten Boom, who said we have to do what we can, right? That was the way she said it. We have to do what we can in this moment. And so her tactics. You want to talk about tactics that don't exactly fit with an ideal world. Her tactics didn't fit with it. She lied all the time. Do we want her to not lie? Because she saved lives through her lies. In fact, she would say, I'm not bothered that I lied. I'm bothered that I lied so easily. It came so easy to me. And so she felt the weight of that choice. But we're glad, aren't we glad, that she made the choice to lie? To the Nazis when they came and said, are you harboring Jews in the South? And she said, no. So I know a lie is not the same thing as a compromise. It's not the same thing. But they're both less than ideal, aren't they? In time of war. And that's what I'm telling you. We're in time of war. This is a war. And you're going to be allied with people you normally would not ally with. It's just the way it is. And you've got to take whatever they'll give you in that moment if you want to save the innocent lives. That's what I'm saying. And that's the best I've got for you. It's not perfect. But I will tell you, I will say that they are not innocent. The mothers are not innocent. Okay? They're innocent before the law right now. We need to make it where they're not. But they are right now. And we have to take that into account whenever we are messaging with them. To just hand them this card. You're creating an enemy. You're not creating an ally.
Well, I would just leave too with you. Basically, we're all Christian. For Christian people here,
Yeah.
we need to obey God, and rather than men. We need to, Jesus said, "You're either for me or you're against me," and we need to take that to heart and examine ourselves and see really what is it. Is this compromise going to keep the back door of abortion open, or are the laws, are the murder laws that are on the books already today efficient enough to end this with an abolitionist bill, and then the 14th Amendment that hears all the cases?
If we are satisfied with compromise, then yes, we have compromised our stance. But I'm telling you, don't never be satisfied with compromise. Never, ever be satisfied with it. Take it in the moment. And once the moment is done, as soon as it's done, as soon as it's on the books, you start coming for the rest. That's what I'm telling you.
Well, I respectfully disagree.
Okay, that's fine. Understand. Yeah, I know, it's not easy, but I hope you learned something. I hope that you enjoyed it, and thank you for being a good audience.
Thank you.